Now, if you were to go back 10 years, fishing with a braided line instead of a standard nylon monofilament line would have been something quite exotic, but these days I think most people that fish for pike or large game fish or sea fish use a braided line, and the advantages are really clear. It's much stronger than standard monofilament line, the diameter is much thinner for the equivalent breaking strain, it's very resistant to abrasion which makes it very durable, and there's no stretch in it like there is with regular monofilament line, which means that you feel much more of the action when you're playing a fish and you don't have to strike quite as hard whenever you're lifting into a fish. So, I need to re-spool one of my reels. We've got some spider wire ultracast InvisiBraid here, which I'm going to try out. Looking forward to that. And what I'm going to show you today is how to spool a reel if you don't have one of these fancy 20-pound reel spooler devices like I don't. Let's show you how. So this is my new braid. It's Spider Wire, which is a brand that I particularly like. They're not sponsoring this video, this is just my own personal preference. It's 30-pound breaking strain, which is perfect for fishing for pike. It means if you get any snags or if you get caught on a sunken tree branch or something, you can pull confidently and you're not going to lose too much tackle. So here's the reel that I want to put my new braid on. You'll notice that the spool already has some old braid on here and I'm using that as backing. That's because if you buy a new reel or if you start with a new spool, there's nothing on here and it can be quite thin, and that means that you'll have trouble casting because you'll find abrasion around the edge here if there's too much friction. So what you want to do is you want to put something on there to give it quite a bit of backing before you wind on your new line. You can use some old line, some old braid, or you can even use a little bit of electrical tape to begin with and then wind some old braid or some old line on there just to thicken it out a little bit. So now that we've got this, let's attach our new braid and then we'll start to wind it on. And I'll show you the simple trick that I use to wind it on without using another person or a reel spooler. The special trick is this. You will need two reels. Take an old reel that you're not using and remove the spool. Make sure the backing that you've got on your second reel spool is about the same as what you're using on the one that you actually want to fix. Tie the new braid to the backing on your second reel spool just by using a regular knot and doubling the two lines together like so. Pull it nice and tight, trim off the edges with a pair of sharp scissors. Perfect. Once you've tied the braid to the backing on the second spool, wind the braid on by hand. Don't worry too much about the distribution, as this is simply to load the reel that we're actually going to take the line from. Once you've started, you can use your second reel to wind the braid on. Don't worry too much about tension because we're going to sort that out in the next stage. It'll look like this when you're done, but don't worry, when you're happy that you have enough braid on the spool, no matter how loosely woven it is, take the braid, cut it off, and then we'll attach it to the reel that we actually want to have the line functional on. Now when I'm attaching our new braid so that we can put it onto the spool that we actually want to use for fishing, I'm not going to use the same knot, I'm actually going to do something a little bit different, and that's because the braid is a little bit slippy and a regular knot, if you ever get down to the backing, which you shouldn't, would simply slip off. So we've doubled the line over, we do a loop, do a couple of twists, pull it through, pull it tight, that shouldn't go anywhere, and then trim it so that it's nice and neat. They're nice and sharp and they cut through braid no problem. Let's get this onto our trusty Shakespeare Mustang here. So here we have our secondary reel and our secondary spool with the new braid on it. And we have the primary reel that we actually want to put this braid on. what we do is we take the spool off, open the bail arm, get that on, close the bail arm, and instead of winding this on by hand, we're going to turn the handle, and as you can see, the bail arm will go up and down with the mechanism and evenly distribute the new braid. Now, why, you're asking, are we doing it like this? Because we can use the secondary reel as a tension device, so that when we reel on the primary reel, we can use the drag and adjust it at the back so that you get the right tension, and it means that it won't be sitting on this very loosely, it'll be sitting on nice and tight, and you don't need to get a second person to come in and tension it for you. And wind the new line on, and you can see it's going on really well with a nice even distribution. It's not going to be too much at one side and a dip in the middle, or a dip at the other side and too much in the middle. When you're done, snip it off, and you've got 150 to 175 yards correctly loaded onto your new reel. There you have it, less than 10 minutes later, a correctly spooled reel full of nice new braid. It's always better to put too much on if you're not sure, rather than not enough. Do a couple of test casts, see how it goes on the spool whenever you're winding back in, and make the necessary adjustments. Try it yourself, let me know how it goes in the comments.